Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Thursday afternoon in Johannesburg. I'm really excited today. We're celebrating Women's Month as the Sowetan Women's Month, and yeah, we're excited to be celebrating everything as everything that women are about, in this country and beyond. My name is Nwabisa Makunga, editor of the Sowetan, and I really want to welcome everybody joining us today on every platform that you're joining us on the Sowetan Facebook page, on Twitter, and obviously our YouTube channel. I'm excited. Today we're talking women in film. Right, and we've got a good panel of incredible women who really done amazing work in the film industry. And I want to introduce them to you. But before I do that, let me just let you know, obviously, as you know, you're more than welcome to chat to us via the live chat on YouTube. We will be interacting with them throughout the next hour or so. So keep those questions coming. I know many of you have been looking forward to this and really wanting to ask them many questions. So let's start here. The woman I'm about to introduce, we're very excited to have her. Liesl Tommy is a film director, theater and film director, and her latest work that we're absolutely looking forward to, the movie Respect, which is the story of world-renowned Aretha Franklin. Liesl, thank you so much for joining us and welcome. Yes,
thank
there we
you.
go.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And next up, I know many of my friends have been talking about her all weekend after the movie Seriously Single actually came out. She is an actress, comedian. We all know her, Miss Tumi Morake. Tumi, how are you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Awesome.
Are you stuck in the US?
Stuck. Private school stuck. Not like real stuck. It's private school stuck. I'm stuck.
I know.
I'm good. How are you?
I was reading about you in Sowetan, I think last week, and they were saying just stuck in the US. I'm like, yeah, stuck.
Yeah, well,
Like that. So thank you so much for joining us. And next up, we have the MD of Indigenous Film Distribution, Helen Kuun. Helen, how are you doing? Helen.
The mute thing, of course. I'm doing well, Nwabisa. Thank you for having us on.
Thank you so much. Again, if any of you are watching on the live chat on our YouTube channel, please do remember to drop your questions. This is really, for me, an exciting and a fun conversation to be had about something so important, basically the film industry. And a lot of us know of the changing dynamics and the changing landscape in the film industry. And I think women have mostly been on the forefront of all those changes. So let's start with this. Liesl, I'll come to you. You are South African born, and one of the people who basically made the breakthrough to Hollywood. Just tell us a little bit about your journey, how it started, and really to where you are now, directing a film that the world is actually waiting for with so much anticipation.
The journey has been, I grew up in South Africa, in Cape Town, in a place called Factoryton. And my family immigrated to the States when I was in high school, and we moved to Boston, and that's where I did a lot of theater. And I became an actress as a teenager there, because theater became a gateway for me. I didn't have friends. I had a lot of culture shock, but there I found community and I found a common language. And so acting became my kind of obsession. And then I transitioned to directing because I had always felt I had something to say politically. And as a director, you just have more control over your content. And I just kind of knew from a very young age that that's what I wanted to do. I used to choreograph dances for my cousins growing up in Cape Town to, the seminal song on Broadway by George Benson. So even if I didn't know what Broadway was, I knew I needed to be on it. So that was sort of how I kind of just had drive that never relented, really. And then when I hit my kind of bucket list things like making it to Broadway, then I moved into television, and then I moved into film. But, I just had a laser sharp focus. And my things that I always wanted to talk about were women, Black women, and issues of race.
There's something powerful that you said recently. You were quoted basically, I think probably summarizing your journey, and you're saying you said you spent many years unpacking big ideas in small spaces for very little money.
Yes.
What does that mean? Take us to the heart of that quote. I was quite inspired by that.
Yeah, so, doing self-producing, theater in New York, no one knew who I was, no one cared. And so I never waited for invitations. I always would just do my own work. And so if that meant, a small storefront that I would turn into a performance space, that's what I did. Because, even in high school in America, there weren't a lot of parts that people would give me. So in the States, there's this thing called Black History Month in February. And so I just decided to start producing events, in the high school around Black History Month, because I was like, okay, so that's where they'll give me a platform. And I would choose poems written by American poets, but also like Dennis Brutus, who no one ever had heard of, brilliant South African poet. So, that was always my thing, was just kind of merging these two identities and using any way I could to tell a story. And I always kept, stayed in a low rent apartment, kept my overhead low so I could focus on art.
Yeah.
It's a lot of sacrifice, and a lot of early poverty, but I was willing to make that sacrifice for the vision.
Yeah, absolutely. Tumi, do you relate to that? I mean, we all know you, as one of I call one of the frontiers of pushing the frontiers of comedy, particularly for women in South Africa. We know you, as a script writer, you've done incredible work, in that and on stage, and now kind of moving into film. How has that, journey has been for you? How has that transition been for you?
I think I'm still transitioning, because in many ways, much like Liesl, when you have the thing that you love and that's the thing you chase, it opens you up to so much more. And for me, it's always about upskilling. I think I've been one of those few people who, more than chasing money, we're always chasing upskilling, because you feel like you want to be not indispensable, but you want to be malleable, you want to be flexible, and you want staying power in the industry. And the only way to do that is if you are always on par with what's happening. And for me, that's always been a big thing. It's always been, yes, there's the comedy, but if I can write comedy on stage for me and perform it, how do I write it for TV and let it translate? Because the comedy I'm watching right now, I can't relate to as a woman, as a Black woman, maybe as a Motswana. So for me, it's always been about that. You want to tell an authentic story, and you want to make sure that people are relating to you, but you also want to eat. You also want to eat. I mean, come on. We're not trying to, it's cute. It's cute. I'm an artist. I want to tell the world my story, but also you must eat. So for me, it's always been, how do I make this thing make me eat? Because, what I like about the way we start is we start with the struggle. We start with this whole thing of keeping your overheads low. We go, I know what it's like to start with nothing. Therefore, I know how to work with very little and make a lot. And I think that's the magic of what we do. We take our smallest stories and we tell such epic stories, like our films. People emotionally respond to these films, and you're going, I literally just took a snippet of my truth and I just shared it with you. And the magic of women as well is that we have this lightness of touch. We don't aggressively throw a story at you, and we don't tell it at you. We share it with you. It's like, you feel like you're being let in. And I don't know if you've had that experience when you watch female directed, female written stories. You feel like someone ropes you in beautifully and they embrace you in that story. And then before you know it, you're like, how am I crying? Why do I have tears in my eyes? Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? Why am I not even sure about what I'm feeling? Why am I responding to this? And it's because there's something about how we tell our stories that just gets straight to the heart.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't just say, hey, when I listen, here, it's not kind of in your face, but it actually attracts you into that.
Yeah. It's a lightness of touch.
there's something I've always wanted to ask you, and really it's about how audiences, particularly in your early days, on stage and etc., how audiences have responded to you, not just as a comedian, but as a female comedian.
I'm very lucky I started when there were very few female comedians happening. So I spent very little time remembering I'm a female comedian. I spent most of the time going, I need to kick these men's asses. That's where it started, and that helped me. I was at an advantage because firstly, when you're creating something new, you can make the coolest mistakes because no one knows it's a mistake because it's never been done before. And the audience was very receptive. The thing is, if you start out doing comedy in South Africa, you're extremely spoiled. We have such an open-minded audience. We have an audience that goes there going, you just need to make me laugh. I don't care what you're bringing. It just better be funny. And number two, when they saw a woman on stage, it was an exciting new thing. And so I always felt like the audience was on my side. It was up to me to let them down or to do right by them. But you always had this sense of they want you to do well. You don't feel like they're ready for you to fail. And that really shaped my career. Like, I've been blessed. It's been a mixture of my own talent, honestly, and the work I put in, but mainly a South African audience that's going, yeah, we're ready to hear you. Tell us something. We're here. Tell us. Because I started out in Brakpan. Guys, I was in Brakpan. Eh? Do you know when you're in Carnival City and it's month end and the worms are there, sweaty, drunk, they've just watched a tits and ass show and you must get there and try and make them laugh. Yeah. I would watch the other guys fall on their butts and then I'd get on this chunky little girl after these guys just watched skinny naked girls dancing for them and make them laugh. That teaches you to commit to your story. I had to learn to commit.
Yeah.
And it paid off.
It certainly did pay off. Helen, I want to bring you in here. And there are two things that Tumi mentioned. So the first one was about really kind of telling authentic stories, right? And the second one was about the fact that they need to eat. So I just want to ask you, from a business point of view, what if you've seen any kind of changes in the landscape of film, particularly in stories that are bankable. So in other words, which stories are bankable, in this industry as far as you're concerned, and which stories are kind of, really kind of difficult to sell?
I think the short answer to which stories are bankable, both Liesl and Tumi will probably know better about that than me, is it's a very unpredictable industry. There's certain genres that are always well loved, and if we talk about these two films that would be relevant to this discussion, Respect on the one hand and Seriously Single on the other, music and romance and comedy tends to translate universally to everyone in the world. We started this business. When I started Indigenous, I have to say I share the sentiments that both the ladies have raised. Is also didn't have anything to start it with. I needed to find one film, then a second film, then a third film to represent, to release, because obviously with distribution, you make a living from the commission you earn. So when the films are doing well, you're doing well. And when the films conk, then you conk. So it's a similar journey. So you learn over time to try and find a balance between what would be relevant at a particular point in time, feel good, as long as it makes you feel something, audiences tend to respond. The darker the feelings, obviously, it's psychology 101 to an extent, provided that it's well executed. The darker the emotions, the smaller the audiences may be. But every single film has an audience, and every single film has a place. But the ones that rise above, let's say, the avalanche of content, because if you think about yourself on a daily basis, the choices that's available to you of how you would spend your time to watch films, documentaries, series, and then you're still watching comedy shows and music shows, and the entertainment options are endless. So how to hook a particular segment of audience goes to exactly to what Tumi was saying earlier, and is authenticity. There's nothing that beats that. If a film has that heart of authenticity, wherever the story comes from, that tends to convince an audience. And audiences are quite, they're pretty clever. They pick it up very quickly if something is not authentic. Working with South African content, which is obviously our key focus, as Indigenous. We see it all the time. There's no such thing as trying to be everything to everyone. A story has to convince and be what it wants to be, absolutely and unashamedly so. If you try and put all little pieces together to make everybody happy, you lose the heart of the story, you lose the heart of the film, and audiences know very quickly. So, and of course, word of mouth is the all-powerful tool. So as much as we can on the business side, try and put all the risk mitigating factors in place. Ultimately, the power is in the hand of the
yeah.
Because once people talk, if a film is out there, no amount of marketing that any of us can do will keep it on the screen, except friends telling friends, this film is really heartwarming, fantastic, makes you cry. That's the golden quality. So, we're really just the facilitators on the business side. Yeah. The power is in the hands of the talent. They are the ones that make the good choices.
Absolutely. And I mean, one can see that. Liesl, I wanna rope you in here. So you woke up and you decided, okay, I'm now going to direct Respect, a film about Aretha Franklin, one of the greatest voices of our time. What? How did that happen? And how has it been? I mean, take us to the heart of that story in that whole process up to now.
Well, this studio and producers reached out to me, and I gave, amongst many other people, and I gave a very clear pitch of what I thought the film should be, the time period that I thought it should look at, and the emotional journey that I thought would be of interest in terms of her story. And I'm an enormously fanatical fan of Aretha Franklin. I listened to all of her music as a very young child. I was obsessed with her. So I just knew what it should be. And they came back to me a few weeks later and they wanted to go with that pitch. And, I made a lookbook with my colleague, Clint Ramos, that I work with, closely over the years, of what the images, what the style I thought the movie should be. And that's pretty much what it is. It was one of those things where the channel's open and I just had a clear sense. And I fought for that vision, every single day. And I knew the kind of cost that I wanted. Jennifer Hudson, had been chosen by Aretha Franklin years before, and it was absolutely the right choice. She knew exactly who should portray her.
It made sense.
So
that voice.
Yeah, that voice, but also the essence of Jennifer is very right in terms of her acting, in terms of her ability to immerse herself in Aretha's spirit, I think. So, it was one of those things that I think it's a kind of a once in a lifetime thing where you go, I am the right person for this film. Yes, it's my first feature film. Yes, it's a studio film, but I am not feeling fears and I'm not feeling doubts. I just know that I can do this if I'm given the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And they were convinced, and we dove in, and it was, every single day was a joy. On set, the actors and I were in complete sync. The crew, believed in the vision, and they just, were there on the ground with me, fighting to execute it. So it was enormously gratifying. I haven't always had that experience, but one of the things I've learned over the years is to surround yourself with enormously talented people who have your back. As a Black woman in this industry, you have to have people who have your back, because everybody's waiting for you to fail.
Yeah. And I suppose, kind of keeping that focus, understanding, and I think, I've seen a lot of this in interviews that you've had before, that understanding that, you do what you do, yes, for yourself, but also to kind of leave a door open, for other women coming in, into this industry. And I've seen, and perhaps you want to talk about this, you've been very deliberate, in trying to kind of leave a door open. And just tell us about some of the stuff you've done, to make sure that you kind of pay it forward.
I mean, it's just, you have to look at who the department heads are in a film, who's the head of costumes, wardrobe, makeup, the set, designer, all of those things, and you just don't take no for an answer, because there's a sense that the studio has that, you know, the reason it's so white is because they've just been hiring the best people, the most qualified people. And so, you know, I just never stop saying, why are those people the best people from your perspective? Because those are the people who have been given jobs for the last 20 years. And why have they been given jobs? So if you cannot look at our industry with the lens, the given that it is racist, sexist, and homophobic, just as a given, then you'll never understand why the same, you know, 10 white men get the same jobs over and over again. But now that, you know, because of the way television is evolving, there's more and more women and people of color who are running shows, and they are more likely to hire, you know, people from diverse backgrounds. They're more open to it. And so I was able to, you know, to find extremely qualified women and people of color who had been primarily in the television space. And so that was another battle, because there's of course a bias around television versus movies and who's qualified to do that. But, you know, you just have to start. You don't have to, you don't need a panel to discuss it. You don't need, you know, a diversity, somebody to come in and say, you know, there should be more diversity. You just have to start hiring. It's just start doing it, you know, and it's just stop being afraid, and stop being territorial, and stop hoarding power and resources. That's all. You know, it's really not difficult from my perspective. And I think my film looks incredible. You know, I think that the visual storytelling, you know, is extremely strong. And I don't think I compromised in any way. And that's that.
I've seen the trailer. It looks absolutely amazing. So absolutely cannot wait to see it. Tumi, I've got a question here for you. And somebody's asking, how was it working with Fulu on Seriously Single?
Oh, it was incredible. You know what I love? I love working with the best people at what they do, because even if there's a part of you that's sleeping, it'll wake up. And it forces you to bring your A+ game. And that was what is fantastic about being cast opposite her. Because when I found out that she was going to be my Didi, I was excited, and then I had a little bit of a freak out. I was like, she's so good. She doesn't even try. She just breathes character, you know, because when I auditioned with her, I was like, man, I had to do work to get into this thing, and she just fell into it. Yeah. But it's also so nice to work with actors who, you know what I like about trained actors specifically? Like, I'm not saying untrained actors, I'm not taking anything away from them, but what I particularly enjoy about trained actors is they understand the concept of offering and accepting. And so in comedy, you work by yourself, but you're playing with the audience. You offer, they accept, or they deny, and it's a whole juggle. And so when you're doing a comic film, you need to offer and accept. You have to have your moments where you go, you're being funny now. Okay, now I'm being funny now. And it's an exchange. It's an unsaid thing, but it's a thing that you feel. And that was the best thing about working with Fulu, in that she's an actor who understands that. And I grew as a performer as well, because, you know, I felt like this chick is not going, oh, okay, you don't do a lot of TV. I'm going to bring myself down a little bit so that you can catch up. She was like, there. And I was like, well, I better start springing up and reach there. So, yeah.
And the rest of the cast, I mean, tell us about, you know, about how things were on set.
Guys, if there's one thing that I feel like South African filmmakers and TV makers don't get enough credit for, is how much magic we can make in no time with no budget. If there's one thing we do not get enough credit for, is our turnaround time and the magic we create, okay? And the spirit on set. For me, what I loved about this film was the attitude of the cast and the crew. You know, usually you feel like there's a hierarchy when you are on a set, you know? And with this, it felt like everybody's a family. It felt like we all left one grandmother's house, got on set, and did what needed to be done. And when that happens, everybody holds everybody else accountable. You don't do somebody else's job, nor are you telling them how to do it, but you're able to hold someone accountable. We're all able to take responsibility for, you know, Not because I don't like being on a set with people who are going, just worry about what you invoice for. No, we're creating. The point of creating is it's a collaborative effort. And so we had Yonda Thomas, who came in as my lover, and that poor man had to deal with me and my discomfort around kissing and all this closeness. Because I was like, I've never in my life, you have to understand, as an actress, I've gone to me, you're chubby, and you don't look like a lead actress, so you don't ever have to worry about ever being in a romantic scene. Honestly, that has been my mentality. And because a lot of my work has been very one night standy, in the sense that I'm in and out. I've never gotten to really get into a role and play with it the way I did with this. So this man had to be patient with me in preparing for this thing and in shooting as well. Shame. Like our first kissing scene, if you ask him how long it took 800 years. When I kissed him, he eventually went, "Oh, she finally agrees to kiss me." I was like, I wasn't personal. Okay, I'm uncomfortable.
I heard, I read, as I say, I read in the Sowetan last week, and they talked about how you were so nervous about kissing. I'm like, but why?
Because, friend, I'm always the clown or the bad guy, but never the lover. That was bizarre. Yeah. And then you had Bahang as well, who's such a cutie. And half the time you're like, please take off your shirt. Let us objectify you. Like, really, it's time. You're beautiful. Allow us, history allows us. You've been objectified for so long as women. Allow us to now revenge. And he was great. And in every performance, like we'd play on during lunchtime on set, and it was fun. There's a scene where there's a lot of tension between me and him, and if I can tell you how much laughter there was going into that, when I watch it back, I go, Toombs, you were a little bit too mad at this guy, but it's because I was working so hard on not corpsing that I really had to bring Noni to the best of her anger, because like if I don't, this thing's gonna end bad.
With all the drama.
But also to have siblings directing you was fun, because then you're going, now they have to be in sync. You must be in sync with them. And then switching between the two of them, as if you're switching seamlessly from just one tone of voice to another tone, but it's still the same voice. It was such a learning curve for me, especially because when I went for this role, I told her it's my role, we talked about it, and she was like, "You're so Noni." I was like, "Yeah, I am, and it's okay. See other people, audition them, it's okay, but it's my role. It's okay. You want to have options, have backup, it's okay, but this is mine." Because I've been in this industry for so long, and as an actress, if people knew how many no's I've gotten, if I can tell you how many things I still audition for and don't get, it's made me appreciate those no's, because I go, my mother always said, whatever denies me reduces my load. And she was right. Those things were never mine. And I think, especially as Black people at a point where our voices have become so important and they need to be heard, we also need to be patient about where our voices are going to be placed. You can't just, I'm Black, it's my platform now, let me talk. It's be aware and be conscious of what you're saying and what's going to happen with that voice, because anything can be done with it and can be used anyhow. So this has been, like, honestly, such a blessing. And how well it's done has also made me go, yeah, what happened here? People have just the pandemic has left people going, so they just have one fun night, and that's what we gave them. We're like, here's some fun.
Yeah. I think the point you're making is quite an interesting one, particularly about Black women, because it kind of segues into a question that I see on the chat. Basically asking you, the person is saying, how do you navigate the issue? And perhaps this question, I'm posing it, yes, to yourself, to me, but to the other ladies as well. How do you navigate the issue of earning less as a Black woman, especially for what you do? And then she's saying, I'm not assuming that you earn less, but that's basically the understanding of, or at least the narrative that that is out there, that Black women in particular are paid less for what they do. It's not just in film, I suppose. It's every other industry. But hey, let's not go there. So how do you navigate that, if that is your reality or something that you know of?
Yeah, I'm curious to actually hear from Liesl and Helen about this, because for me, like I said, when I started out, there were so few women doing it. In fact, there weren't any who were doing it fully like I was. And so I just expected to get paid what the guys are getting paid. And the one time where I've had back and forths and serious fights with corporate would be where they don't understand how I expect to be paid the same as someone. It actually was blatantly said to me once where a woman was like, but that's how much you pay Riyad Musa. And I went, yes, that's nice. Even me, that's how much you're going to pay me. What do you mean? Literally, it started with, but we pay Riyad Musa this much. And I was like, and then how does that change the price of bread in my life? This is how much you're paying me. And so my struggle is slightly different in that, like I said, this industry is so young that you are setting the rules. And I feel like the women who are doing comedy right now, I'm speaking for South Africa, are setting the rules. Celeste and I are not going to settle for less just because you say, but women don't make that much. You will pay us. We value ourselves. We add tax, and then we add tax to that tax. We're not here to play. We need to pay it forward. And I'll tell you why. We need to pay it forward because then the girls and women who come after us will be able to then get what they should get. Because we're still, after this fight, not going to get what we really should get. But whoever comes after us will get it.
Absolutely. I think what you're saying fits in very, very well. And Helen, I'm going to bring you here, fits very, very well with really the theme of what we're doing, as a Sowetan Women's Club this month and beyond, which is basically saying know your place. And it's really kind of, a flip on, remember how women have always been told, know your place, sit in the kitchen and behave. And I think, this is really about knowing our place, and our place is pretty much at the head of that table. It's pretty much, directing that movie. It's pretty much running that company. So Helen, I want to bring you in here. And perhaps you can, share some views on the question that has been posed to Tumi about women and in particular Black women, and what they earn, in the industry.
Well, in this particular instance on this film, they're a very unique team, the Burnt Onion team, as Tumi said, siblings, Retabile, Katlego, and Tsepo. So it's a very unique way of directing, to have a brother and a sister behind the camera, and they absolutely complete each other. I mean, I have to be honest, I was slightly nervous when we took on the film before they started shooting, because it's such an unusual scenario. Normally it's, no film can be made without everybody collaborating. It's such a collaborative process, but that kind of directing style is quite unusual. So from my seeing of this budget, everybody got paid the same. They were very, very fair as producers. They're pretty smart across the board. They have great creative understanding. I guess much like both of you, both ladies also do have great creative understanding, but equally comfortable with an Excel spreadsheet and working on a budget. So it certainly has improved over time. And I think confidence is a big part of this. The concept of just doing it, this is the budget we have available. Let's just get it done, like Liesl said. Don't wait for someone to help and facilitate and do 20 million other things, because these films are made with reasonably conservative budgets. Chances and risks are taken and creative choices are made. So if you surround yourself with a team of people that are great at what they do, even though it may be the first time they're doing it. I mean, we've got a fantastic DOP coming through at the moment, Khopi. There's like film after film after film. She's definitely one of the most sought after DOPs in South Africa at the moment. And she's a young Black woman, very dynamic. So there's more and more and more of these examples. Like, I'm fairly certain Khopi is not going to be working for less money than Gabelo, for instance, who shot this film. So in South Africa, to an extent, we're pretty lucky because it's such a young industry. Yes, it's old, it's been around since whenever, but we've been carrying on with the wrong films. We only started to find our groove with variety and diversity and different kinds of stories, not only dramas, something for everyone, because there's no such thing as a film that's for every single person in the world. There's a particular market for every single film. So we're pretty lucky in that regard. You can take chances. You can team up your film team the way you see it best to fit the story, the spirit of the film. So from what I've seen of film budgets, the South African women are pretty teethy about being paid decent money, the same as the guys. And there's also, quite a lot of good guys in the industry that will equally agree to that. that won't be saying, well, you know, the romantic lead is going to get double what the female, the male one is getting double what the female one gets. I think there's a band of people in our entertainment industry, we're very lucky that way, that have started moving properly in the right direction. Of course, we've benefited from the Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movements and all of that. It comes to us. But and correct me if I'm wrong, Tumi and Liesl, but in my assessment or what I've seen of budgets, there's definitely not a particular, you're going to be paid less if you're a woman by default attitude when you're working with producers that are worth their salt. I mean, there's always people that take chances, right? But
sure,
they'll carry on, and they won't carry on for long.
Liesl, I'm going to bring you in here. I think I must actually, you know, kind of eat humble pie. There's a lot of questions that are coming through, you know, on the chat. So eat humble pie in the sense that, you know, kind of not ask a lot of the questions that I wanted to ask. You know, there's somebody who's asking, Kelly, and I think if I may, perhaps just kind of combine Kelly and Terrence's questions. Jennifer Hudson, Forrest Whitaker, Mary J. Blige, to name a few, and the ladies are really wanting to know, how was it, you know, working with those guys? Obviously, I mean, you are the director, so you're not kind of looking at them and, you know, and thinking, oh my God, you know, they're stars, but just your own kind of experience, you know, from a professional point of view, how was it working with all of them?
It was wonderful. You know, they were all so committed. Like I said, I communicated the vision with as much clarity as I could, and they were 100% on board. You know, I really felt strongly, coming from a theater background, that we should be rehearsing in advance, you know, and the studio agreed to it. And, you know, Mary J. flew from I don't even know where to spend one day going, you know, a long day, just really going through the scene with myself and Jennifer. And we had a really amazing conversation about, you know, what it is to be, you know, a music superstar, you know, that generation versus this generation, you know, very intimate and honest, so that I could feel that they were all in. They really wanted to do justice to these women's stories that they were portraying. And it's the same with Forrest and Marlon Wayans, and then the Broadway people that I brought in. You know, they really were committed to the vision. And my experience with actors, not just, you know, superstars like the people that I, you know, worked with in this film, is if they feel that they are in good hands with the director, if they feel seen and if they feel heard and valued, they will do anything for you. And if they believe in the vision, and that is exactly what happened. And, you know, I having been an actor, I have an enormous, passionate love for actors. I think what they do is incredible. I am astounded by them, you know, daily. It's a crazy thing that actors do. I think, you know, regular people out in the world sort of think of them as frivolous, but what they have to do is look at some of the hardest, most complex, most painful things that human beings go through, and then purposefully put themselves into that place. Why would we do that? And yet they do it. There's so much more depth to you know, these great talents than they're given credit for. And, you know, I always feel like it's a privilege to be in their presence, to work with, you know, people who have hearts and souls like that. And I think that they feel that. They feel that I have, you know, enormous admiration. At the same time, I'm quite tough. You know, I do have a very no-nonsense approach, which I think is very South African, honestly. You know, like I don't take nonsense. And I have very clear expectations, and I will say if I feel like people are, you know, are not living up to them. You know, I don't like laziness, and I don't like, you know, lack of discipline, and I don't like lack of respect. People must be treated, you know, I don't care who you are on that set. They have to be greeted, and they have to be treated with respect. And that I know is very South African. So, you know, and so but I think when people feel valued, they bring their best self.
Yeah. What do you think, what it is about I mean, we all know Aretha, right? What do you think, is about her story that perhaps you may not have known, until this project, or something that really kind of, moved you in her person, in the person that she was. And how do you think, you've kind of done justice in telling that story?
Well, one thing that I was very intrigued by was that everybody always said how profoundly shy she was. And that she was very guarded in terms of her public persona. And when you go back and look at her interviews as an adult, she was extremely reserved, like very proper. You know what I mean? Like she just always, there was always a distance, and there was always like, what I've come to understand is that profound shyness as a child, the way she handled her fame was to create that persona of distance. So, it was how you integrate, and, we all know this, you have to take your strengths and your weaknesses and make it work for you, right? So what she did is she took that like discomfort and shyness and turned it into a persona. And so I was very intrigued by that she, she didn't try to change who she was or fake it. She kind of morphed it. And so I was, I wanted to know about that shy little girl with this big voice. And that really was like something that really motored my vision of her storytelling. Is the art is immense and powerful and bold and fearless, and then the person was almost the opposite.
And I think that's what you really get with a lot of artists, isn't it? And from all over. And I think perhaps it is what not only how people cope, but it's really kind of what they have to do. Sometimes the art may be very different from the person themselves. I want to ask you one more question, Liesl, if you may. As I said, there are a lot of questions that are coming through. There's a question from Shakil who's asking if and I think probably the answer is yes, that has budget ever hindered your technical or production quality? Have you ever been, perhaps not the quality itself, but how, shortage of budget have actually, hindered what you would wanted to do?
I mean, we should never actually admit this in a public forum, but, whatever the budget is, you make it work. So just pretend you never heard me say that, because of course we have to always ask for the budget.
Moving
but part of being a good artist is to problem solve. And every single process, whether it's a tiny space in a tiny theater, in a tiny town, to a studio film, there's a budget negotiation. Budget negotiation is part of your job. And figuring out which battles to fight is part of your job. I can do that on a small scale. I can just do it on the street, 2 people, overs, and we're out of there. But no, or this one, no, it's going to cost $100,000 to build that set, and that's what it has to be. So you always, I think you just have to, if you're thinking that this budget's going to compromise the vision, then you should walk away.
Ouch. Straight up. Tumi, you went to the US on holiday with family. And then boom, Cyril's like, hey, hi guys, Kaneni, the world just tell us about that, but also what this couple of months of you being there have taught you, or either if there are any kind of opportunities that have opened up for you then.
Yeah, so much like Liesl, some of us have been chasing that American dream. So we came here. We came here pretty much just to pick up our green cards and figure out what it means for us going forward. And the idea was, we'll be here for a couple of months, do what needs to be done, do the paperwork, head back to SA, wrap up life in SA, and then figure out if we're doing a whole living between 2 countries thing or staying here, because I think in any partnership, and in this particular partnership, I'm talking marriage, you follow each other's dreams, you carry the other person's thing. And America's always been my husband's vibe. And so I said, you've carried me this far in my career. It's my turn to, pay it forward. And so I'm like, we'll do the move with you. And then Corona happens. And Corona's like, but you're here. Where are you going? Let's be at home. Let's be together. Because my plan in the US was to see the US, because I've never been to America ever in my life before. Mpo's been a few times, and that's why this was the move he wanted, because it felt right for him. And so I had all these gigs lined up. I was going to be doing club gigs. I was going to be meeting with some potential managers, representation. And then the Rona happened and things changed. First of all, I ran out of New York faster than you can say New York, because at the time, it was becoming the epicenter, and the governor was now doing the shutdown. And so we ran away, came to Virginia, because no one's trying to be like stuck in an apartment with 3 children. I have 3 children, guys. Like, no. I didn't want anything that's going to drive me to drink. You need to be sober through this pandemic. So we came here because now they can go outside, run outside. And the opportunities that have created themselves have been that I've stepped out of my comfort zone. One thing I've realized about my career, I begin to plateau when I start to get bored, when I start to get comfortable. I always plateau. It's a personality thing. It's even with my life generally. I should never be allowed to get bored as a child. And so to me, my inner child was sitting.
You become destructive.
Yeah, I become very self-destructive, and just generally, not even that. I'm not productive. So what this did, it forced me to go, Toombs, you have skills that you've barely played with. So let's jump in there. I've got a full-on studio that I've put together. I bought a green screen. I bought lights. I upgraded all the software on the computers, on our phones. And I've been working. We send self-tapes. I've been auditioning for stuff. I do a breakfast show every morning in South Africa. So I'm up super early doing that. And I'm also writing, I'm writing and also trying to remember to take care of myself. The great thing about what happened is it forced me to stop. For about a month, I got to stop. I got to breathe. I got to sleep. I got to taste 6 hours of sleep for the first time in I don't know how long. Like, somebody's going, 6 hours, really? Hey, 6 hours is a big deal in my life. It was an incredible time for me. And to also kind of reset with my husband, and even actually go, maybe splitting the family wasn't such a great idea, because one of the possibilities was, let him go to the US. I'll keep doing my thing in South Africa. That's low-hanging fruit for me. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad we've done this. I'm finding new ways of selling myself. It's a time for me to reimagine myself and re-virgin myself, as it were. And yeah, to create, man. It's a great thing. Like, I feel like the Corona, it's a horrible thing that's happened to the world in terms of, we all know the economic differences that are happening here. Like, it's social inequalities are now proper under the spotlight, especially for South Africa. It's tragic. It's tragic. But on a personal level, I think some of us need to go back and go, this pandemic has been good because it's forced the entire world to pull the emergency brake. We've pulled emergency brakes, and we are finding new ways and other ways of doing things, respecting human space, respecting boundaries, and valuing life. Because I feel like people's attitude towards this thing says a lot about whether you value life or not. Because we could have jumped on a repatriation flight and just gone back home and gone to figure it out. But I also said to my husband, we have 3 asthmatics in the family. I'm not going to sit in a plane for 15 hours breathing the same as everybody else, while I feel like the medical experts are all playing guesswork here. Until someone is sure as to how you can and can't get this thing, I'm not moving. I may be in a country that in itself is an epicenter, but where we are positioned within the country, I'm happy and comfortable with. And so I think people also are being forced to be conscious, because we've all been living very unconsciously. I think even the stuff we've been consuming unconsciously. And now, even as creatives, we're creating consciously now. Because the fact that Corona and Black Lives Matter hit a high at pretty much the same time says a lot about how we have to, as humanity, pause.
Yeah.
Pause and wake up.
There's a lot of talk, and perhaps Helen, you may want to come in here. There's a lot of talk about how now the way that we do everything, in fact, not just film, has changed. Are there any kind of sort of practical changes that you are willing to share about how now things have changed, basically, in this industry, but also do they come with, kind of better opportunities, or what exactly do they mean for the industry?
I think the first thing about that is is that thing about that's the budget, make it work. You know, we're in that kind of situation again. That it's the same for all of us around the world. Cinema is completely different to what it's been before, but it's there and it's going to work. So we'll come up with new things. Shooting, being on set is completely different. Everything I read seems to indicate that up to 30% of the budget will be spent on safety regulations now, depending on where you're shooting in the world. I guess the shooting schedules will change because you'll only be able to have that many people in a particular space at a particular time. Seriously Single is a good example because this film was going to go out theatrically initially. It was made to be popular. And then when the coronavirus came, I mean, we had long discussions, obviously, between the producers and ourselves and with Netflix, you know, to go out with Seriously Single and cinema until anything before December, February next year, which we couldn't do anyway because that's where Respect is. And, you know, that will do extremely well in our territory and everywhere in the world. Was what is the best possibility to reach audiences for this particular film at this point in time? So some films will go to alternative platforms, dovetail one platform with the other. If you look at what the studios are doing around the world, there's various going to SVOD, PVOD, you know, I'm sure everybody's reading what we're reading. Sometimes the films will go to more than one platform at the same time. Sometimes it will be in some countries theatrical and in other countries not. It's a whole different world, but we simply have to adapt. The upside is we wouldn't be having a discussion like this one we're having today necessarily, online, visually talking to each other, even though we could actually, because the application existed, but it wasn't something that happened all the time across a number of countries. You know, that's so there, as much as there's difficulties that have arisen, we simply have to adapt. Entertainment will always be there. Filmmakers will always have stories to tell that people are like literally dying to see. So we just have to continue finding the best way of getting them to audiences. And the artists will continue being more and more. It's going to affect the kinds of stories that are told, which is going to be interesting. You know, there was one film made during lockdown in South Africa by Tim Green and his team, and it's literally all on phones. So there'll be new narratives that come from this. But this industry will be changed by the virus as much as any other industry. And obviously the cinema, the exhibitors are in the front line of feeling it because those are enclosed public spaces. So a lot of changes and measurables have needed to be put in place in that particular environment.
There's actually a question, Helen, here from Makano, who's asking, you know, whether you think there is now room for queer cinema now that, you know, distribution has gone online. Do you want to perhaps just share a little bit of thought around that?
Well, there's always been room for queer cinema. It's just that we want that room to be a bigger room than, you know, the smallest one on the block. Yeah. But I think films like, if I just look at what's been made, queer cinema from Africa is particularly hard to find. So films like Nwabisa and Rafiki and Skoonheid and whatever that's come from this territory in the last 3 or 4 years have been groundbreaking. But if you particularly look for Black queer cinema available from the world, even if you're trying to bring it here from other places, so many of these films are very hard to find. But it's like any segment. If you can reach, let's say, 100,000 people in 50 places in the world versus only 100,000 people in one place in the world at a given point of time, your base of interest grows. So it's a yes answer. There has always been space, but we need the space to be bigger. And every time we release a queer film, they come with some challenges. You know, I mean, I'm sure everybody's aware of all the court cases around the wound. And when we released Rafiki, it's still banned in Kenya. There's lots of political shifts and social political shifts that need to happen for queer cinema to keep on going from strength to strength. Mm-hmm. And the fact that so many television series and films are featuring queer characters as part of the narrative helps that over time. So it's a yes, but you know, there's still a lot of work to be done. It's not like we're even vaguely there yet.
And perhaps Liesl, you wanna just jump in onto this one, which is, there's a lot of work, as Helen says, there's a lot of work, to be done. And I know, people like yourself are very deliberate in trying to, to create spaces for people who've always kind of felt othered, in this industry. But can you perhaps talk about, how far have we come, and really, how far are we going? What work more needs to be done to actually kind of normalize, for everybody, the spaces in which you operate?
I think in terms of how far have we come, I don't think we're even remotely as far as we should be. We have neither equality nor equity. And until we have both of those things, it's all lip service. I feel like I'm working way too hard to get, to get people in the room with me. It's 2020 and I'm still, as you said, one of the firsts. I'm often the first that looks like me in a room. I'm still dealing with, really backwards men who, make assumptions because they haven't had enough of me, that they've had to work with. Which was why, having my own film was such a joy, because I could surround myself with really progressive thinkers, people who believe in just that, it's based on the work and not on all of the other, nonsense. So, but that for me, it's just about, you really do have to dismantle the systemic issues of race, class, gender bias, all of homophobia, everything. And that means that you have to topple the people who are in charge. It's just because I actually don't believe that either they are interested in changing or they're capable of changing. They will change as incrementally as possible, for as long as possible, and call it progress. And like I said, it's exhausting. I feel like I'm going to have to, give a separate bill just for, the never-ending race workshops that I have to do, in these jobs. And it's just, it's boring. And my white colleagues don't have to do it.
Yeah.
They just get to direct their movie, you know what I mean? Or their TV show or their play. So I'm really fed up, so, I've started taking the filter off. I never really had much of a filter, but it's just completely gone now. And I call things anti-Black when I see them. I say that things are, this decision that you're trying to push on me is a product of systemic racism. Because.
And what is the response often like when you do that?
There's confusion, there's pain, there's horror, there's apologies. But, before there was a lot of time spent trying to make white people comfortable, so that they could they'd be willing to hear you. And I think what we just have to do is make them uncomfortable.
And you use the word Liesl toppling. So you're saying, we're gonna have to topple basically the people, at the top. Does that mean you did? Does that mean kind of creating alternative, spaces for people who look like you and I to actually operate, or does it actually mean sort of directly saying, you there at the head of this company, kind of try and push people to change or basically get out of the way? What exactly, in your view, is really practically toppling?
I think it's both. So, for example, I'm doing in the theater world specifically. It's about making sure that funders are sending money equally to Black-run organizations, and not-for-profits, making sure that they're not ghettoized, where, okay, so I'm going to give this white institution 80% of this pot, and that little cute Black institution or Asian institution is going to get, we're going to divvy up the rest for them. And that's been a practice that's been going on for so long, and it's so intrinsically racist because it's just you know, that where does the value go? Is, you know, they're making value judgments about us and our work every single step of the way, and that has to end. And also, you know, there are people who've been in charge of institutions for like, you know, 10, 20 years, and they have to go. It's too long.
It's
you know,
time.
I just like make room for other people. You know, make room for other voices, other thoughts, other experiences. You know, it's just like, I talk about hoarding of resources and opportunities. Like, that television show called Hoarders, it's really a horrible show. You don't want to be that person. So it's not, you know what I mean? It's not just about your house and having hundreds and hundreds of, you know, I don't know what knickknacks in your house. It's about everything. You know, it's just time to share. Didn't they teach that to you when you were a small child? You know, it's so I've become really impatient. And I've also, you know, there used to be a time in the beginning when I was very grateful for opportunities and I was always saying how grateful I was, but now I am quick to say, you're lucky to have me. And we should all be saying that, particularly women. We're always being made to feel like we should be grateful to people, and Black people are always being made to feel like we should be grateful. No, that's the opposite. You've been hoarding resources, and, you know, just, you should be grateful that I'm finally in the space to tell you that. You should thank me for telling you you're a hoarder.
Absolutely. What you are saying, I know we're pretty much running out of time, but I think it's important for us perhaps to do this. What you're saying really, really fits into the theme of what we are trying to do, particularly for this month for the Sowetan Women's Club. And I did mention kind of at the beginning that our theme is really much about knowing our place. So I want to play perhaps a short video. And we really kind of do it for encouragement of our members, of everybody who's sitting, who's watching, you know, today. And it's really about, you know, what not only this month, but really what we're about. We need to know our place. Shall we get it rolling, guys? Do I need to say anything more? Women, we need to know our place, absolutely know our place. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. I felt like that hour just kind of went very quickly by. Thank you so much to Liesl Tommy, who is a film director of the film Respect. Thank you to our guest Tumi Morake, actor and comedian. And thank you so much to Helen Kuun, who is the MD of Indigenous Films. Guys, thank you so much. I feel like this conversation has really been, you know, kind of goosebump stuff for me. Thank you to our members for always supporting us. And remember, this was the first of several conversations that we plan to have with the Women's Club, Sowetan Women's Club. From myself, Nwabisa Makunga, editor of the Sowetan, Ndiabulela Tsamaku. Thank you very much. Goodbye.